Hey guys, it's Monique here, and today's video is going to be about 5 things I wish I knew before entering into law school. So, if you want to know what I wish I would have known prior to entering law school, stay. So, the first thing I wish I would have known was how time consuming law school actually is. You know, I guess I thought of law school as any other type of schooling that I had done. I thought of law school like high school, like college, Oh, 3 years. Well, I can do that. I did 4 years of high school, I did 4 years of college. So I kind of was thinking it was going to be similar in that it was going to go by fast. And while it did go by fast, it was very time consuming in how much effort and energy and actual time I had to put into studying and learning the material and being able to apply the material to fact patterns. And I mean, the amount of time that it took to really grasp a lot of the concepts was grueling. And it was not only time consuming, it was physically and emotionally draining. um, it's not just something you can read in a textbook and pick up after that. You really have to put into practice what you're learning. You have to talk it through. You really have to take your time with it. It's not like high school where you're learning about history, or college where you major in a particular subject and you're just learning one thing. And law school, you're learning anywhere from 14 to 17 different subjects, because essentially those subjects are going to be tested on the bar exam. And so you're not only trying to grasp the material from one grueling subject, but you're trying to grasp the material from all of these different subjects that you've never seen before in your life. And it's really time consuming. I mean, most of my day was spent, if not at school, studying, because every other day there was a quiz, there was a test, there was this, there was that, and there was just so much time that had to go into learning these concepts. So I would say number one is I wish I knew how time consuming law school was actually going to be. It wasn't just a go to class, come home, do your homework, go to sleep. No, it was go to class, stay after class, work with your study group, study for tomorrow's test, and then do it all over again. So that was an everyday practice. And I literally didn't have much of a life in law school because it was so time consuming. The second thing I wish I knew was that a lot of students that were in my class had, one, already taken law school before and were redoing law school or had re-enrolled or whatever the case may be, and two, there were a lot of students who were using the law career or getting a law degree as their second career. What I mean by that is a lot of students that were in my class were older and had already had a career and basically were going to law school to start all over again and essentially have another career. And so I wish I knew that, because I would have been a little bit more gracious upon myself during my whole law school experience. There were often times where I felt like I was the dumbest person in the class, or really wasn't grasping the material because there was something wrong with me, when in actuality there wasn't anything wrong with me. There were just others in my class who had taken the class before, or who had life experience that aided in their understanding of the material. For example, there were people in my class that had been married before. I had never been married. I went straight from college to law school. Not saying that that's the reason why I wasn't married, but I was focused on school. I didn't deviate and do anything other than school. Whereas there were other individuals in my class who were much older and had been through marriages. And so when we got to the community property subject, they understood how assets are divided in marriages upon divorce in California, because they had been through 1, 2, 3 different marriages. And I didn't know that because I had never experienced that before. And so I just wish I would have been a little bit more gracious upon myself. I would have probably saved myself a lot of heartache and, headache, had I known that there was nothing wrong with me. This material was just new to me because I had never experienced anything like that before, nor had I ever done law school before. So I wish I would have known that there were going to be people in my class who had done this before, who had taken these classes before, who had enrolled in law school before and were just redoing it. Maybe they dropped out and wanted to come back. And I wish I would have known that there were going to be people in my class who had these life experiences. Maybe they were a trust fund kid, so they knew what to expect when we got to the wills and trust area of law. I wish I would have known that this was going to be something totally different than the college experience. Not everybody in my class was going to be on the same level or playing field as myself, because there were people in my class that came from all walks of life. I guess in college I was used to everybody being around the same age. We all pretty much shared the same experiences. We were all pretty much young. It was just a totally different world when I got to law school, and I wish I would have known that it was going to be that way. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been so hard on myself, and I would have saved myself a lot of tears for sure. The third thing I wish I would have known kind of piggybacks off of the second thing, in that I wish I would have known that there were going to be some students in my class who had parents who were lawyers, who had parents who were lawyers, who had parents who were judges, who had sisters, brothers, cousins, who were in and practicing in the legal profession. Again, I went into law school thinking everybody was going to be on the same playing field, same playing level as myself, and didn't expect to see individuals in my class who had somewhat of an advantage in knowing the material, because they had the cousin, the aunt, the uncle, the mom, the dad. That was the lawyer. That was the judge. That was the prosecutor, and so they had somewhat of a foundational basis of the material, which was much different than my experience in coming in and not knowing any attorneys, not knowing anything really about the law other than what I saw on TV and read in the newspapers. So I just wish I would have known that there were going to be people in there in my class that had that advantage, because again, I would have been a little bit more gracious upon myself, and it would have saved me a lot of headache, and I would have had a better understanding of where some of these students were coming from and knowing this material off the cusp. And so I wish I would have known that prior to going to law school, because that would have helped me prepare for the experience. The fourth thing that I wish I would have known prior to entering into law school was how cutthroat some students were actually going to be. I mean, like I said, graduated high school, graduated college, schooling was never an issue for me in terms of competition until I got to law school. And I know generally when you go to graduate school, that's when it becomes competitive, because right out of graduate school, you go into the workforce. And so everybody's trying to be at the top of the class so that they can get the great internships, the great jobs, and things of that nature. However, I just wish I would have known that there were going to be some people that were going to do everything they can to hold you back. There were some experiences that I had in law school that really opened up my eyes to how the real world was going to be in terms of the workforce, because I saw a lot of backbiting and backstabbing in law school. People trying to do whatever they could do to be number one in the class. If that meant knocking someone else down, if that meant not giving somebody the study material that they had, if that meant, physically getting in the way of somebody gaining information or material, they were going to do that because they wanted to be the top of the class. And I wish I would have known that, because I would have prepared myself better emotionally. I probably wouldn't have been so vulnerable and so open and transparent with some people about what I was experiencing, and maybe not as honest about how I was doing. I noticed in law school, a lot of people were focused on grades and test scores and just where others were at in the class. And I was always honest about where I was at. And that actually bit me in the butt, because that information was only used to fuel the fire of those who wanted to climb on my back and get ahead of me. And so I wish I would have known that prior to going to law school, because I wouldn't have been so open and honest about where I was and how I was doing. And the very last thing I wish I would have known prior to going to law school was how hardcore the professors were going to be. Oh my gosh, I came from a college where there wasn't a lot of pressure in answering questions. There really wasn't a lot of pressure in participating in class. But in law school, it was the complete opposite. There was a lot of pressure. If you didn't have the answer, the professor would grill you in front of everybody and didn't care if your feelings were hurt or not, because they were trying to prepare you for what ultimately judges were going to do to you in court. And so I wish I would have known what to expect in that regard, because I would have tried my best to toughen up my skin a little bit more. I remember my first day and being called on to brief a case. And, I didn't even know the first thing about briefing a case. And I think I said something like, I don't know. And the professor chewed me out in front of everybody and literally stayed on me until I gave an answer. And so I wish I would have known that information prior to going to law school, because I could have been more strategic about how I answered questions and how focused and detailed I was in doing the homework. I just assumed you do the reading, you do the homework, you brief the cases, turn them in, and that's it. I didn't expect to be grilled in class about the readings, about the analysis of certain cases. That wasn't something I expected, and so it was an eye-opener for me, and it was a very difficult transition period in my life, because I've always been shy and quiet and the person in the back of the class that really didn't say anything. I've always gotten good grades because I did my work, but I never really participated in class. And in law school, there's no option to participate or not. You either participate or you don't, and you don't get credit for the day. And so because I wanted to get credit for actually being there, I had to participate. And even, if I wasn't actively volunteering to participate, I would be called on and I would be expected to give an answer. So I wish I would have known that that was the expectation in every single one of my classes, because like I said, I could have been more strategic about how I went about studying the material and things of that nature. I also wish I would have known that professors had favorites. I know that sounds cliche and it sounds, obvious. Like, you should know that. You should have known that since, the inception of being in school, which I did. I understood that. But, in law school, they harp on the fact that everything's anonymous. We don't know whose paper we're grading, this, that, and the third. Okay, that's not the truth. Your professors do know, especially if it's a smaller law school that you're planning on attending or you are currently attending. Your professors definitely know whose paper they're grading. They definitely have favorites. I'm a professor myself now, and I, hate to say it, but I have favorites, and my favorites are those who make my life easier. So if you're volunteering and you're helping me, with the flow of class because you're so active in participating, you are automatically going to be one of my favorites because you're making my job easier. And I think that's just human nature. And I really didn't see that or understand the full grasp of it until I got into law school and saw how, certain people were favored because they were making the professor's life easier. They were actively volunteering. They were questioning certain things, which, commenced a dialogue, and it just made the class flow better. And I think any professor, would want their students to engage in that type of way. And so I wish I would have known that professors really expected that and wanted that and favored those who did that, because maybe I would have went about it a different way. I wouldn't have been the person who didn't actively volunteer. I wouldn't have been the person who was scared to speak up, was scared to ask questions, had I known that professors really welcomed that and wanted that, especially in law school. Because a lot of times these professors in law school have other jobs, and so they don't have a lot of time to baby the students. They want students in there who are ready, willing, and able to brief the cases, to have a discussion about the analysis of certain cases and why they turned out this way and why they turned out that way. And so I wish I would have known that. All in all, I don't regret going to law school. I think going to law school was one of the best decisions I could have ever made in my entire life. I feel like I learned a lot of real world life experiences from my particular experience in law school, but I did want to come on here and share a few things that I evaluated after law school that I wish I would have known prior to going, because it would have probably made my experience a little bit more better. But I don't want any of this to dissuade any of you guys in going to law school. If that's your dream, if that's your passion, I say definitely do it. Just be prepared and be gracious towards yourself. I think I can't stress that enough. Law school is hard enough. The material, like I said in the very beginning, is very difficult to understand and grasp. So you don't want to stress yourself out even more by being worried about things that are out of your control. If somebody's been through something that correlates to what you're learning in law school, you can't beat yourself up for not knowing that concept or that material because you've never gone through it before, right? You can't beat yourself up because you didn't get as high a grade on a criminal law class, but maybe a person in your class who used to be a police officer got a better grade because he's seen it before, and so you just want to be gracious towards yourself. You want to give it your all. You want to ask questions. You do not want to be afraid. I think the biggest takeaway I want you guys to get from this video is confidence. Go in being confident. You are smart enough to get into law school, and so go in there knowing that you know what you're doing, you know what you want, and get what you need out of it. Law school is not cheap. It's very expensive. And even if you get a full ride, it still is time consuming. And you don't want to waste your time nor your money in not getting what you need out of the experience. So ask questions. Do not be afraid to debate with your professor about something you just don't understand. Trust me, they will respect you more if you go to them asking questions, asking the hard questions, always in a respectful manner. But I don't think any professor, especially if they're a good professor, should be upset about a student inquiring further into a reading or a class assignment. So if law school is in the cards for you, I say definitely do it. Just go in knowing that, there are going to be certain things that people are going to do or say that may try to derail you because they're trying to get to the top. Don't take it seriously. There are going to be certain people who understand certain areas of law better simply because either one, they've gone to law school before, or they've experienced it in their personal life. Don't let that bring you down. You just continue being you, doing everything you need to do to get through it and being that great attorney that you ultimately want to be. So if you like this video, please, please, please like it and share it. And leave me comments down below. I want to talk to you guys. I want to get your I want to answer any and all questions that you guys have for me. I've been at a law school now for 5 years, and I feel like this was a good point in my life to really evaluate and do a video on what to expect and things I wish I would have known prior to going to law school. So I'll see you guys in my next one. Thanks for watching.